It's the end of the day here. I got this frame all ground down, all my welds and all that. Looks pretty nice. Happy with the way it turned out. Got the crossmember finish welded in there too. Right now I'm kind of mocking up for the axle up here. As you can see, I'm running a 4-link setup that'll come up to the bat wings here. There's the bag mount, still mounting here like so. Right, and then the bag goes in between there. I'm actually gonna have to cut these down about an inch so that I have a 3-inch gap between here and the top of the plate, because that's what my bag compresses to, 3 inches. I got all those all done. And then I did these up here too for this bag cross member. Today I'm going to start installing this 4-link setup that I got for the front. So what I'm going to do first is I'm actually going to box in these brackets that I got. I bought these from Speedway. These are welded to the underside of the frame. I'm going to actually box these in because they come unboxed. I want a little extra structural stability, so I'm boxing in all that side there and this side here, right? And then this top side I'll make a bracket that will weld it to the frame. And then in order to locate this front axle here, I want to mount it in the center of this bag mount here, so I have to move it back a little bit, kind of adjust it. You can see this cross member here, mounted in the center of this, and I'm using jacks. And then what I'm doing here is I'm measuring from the ground up to the center of the spindle right here, which is approximately 15 inches. That means that I can fit a 30-inch tire on this and still lay frame. So if I wanted to fit a smaller tire, that would work also, but I can lay frame up to a 30-inch tire, which is plenty big. Most tires are usually about 26, 27 inches, depending kind of what you want to do. So I got this set up here on jack stands. I measured each side's exactly the same. Floor is level, so that's easy. So now then when I get it centered in this bag cross member here, right, I'll just end up tacking this axle onto my frame with a couple of really good hot tacks. And then I will move these jack stands out of the way, right? And then I can start adding my 4-link this way. You want to make sure that your axle's centered this direction also, obviously. So I'm just going I'm going to go based off of the edge of this up to the corner of my frame here. And then you can also tell kind of eyeballing it just by looking at the plug welds here. And then the plug weld there also. Usually the leaf spring is what kind of locates that. But because I'm not running leaf springs in this, it's a whole different ball game, you know. So then when I am doing this, also another tip here, see these are threaded rods, right? They're adjustable. You can turn it each way, whatever. You want to start out with it about 3/8 of an inch from the end of this here, so you have adjustment each way. But if you have to end up adjusting it out a little bit, you're not going to be weaker because there's about this much thread in there. You want as much thread as possible in there, but you still want to have adjustment this way in case something gets a little janky or you need to do something different for alignment reasons or whatever. Now you can see right here that I got a couple 1.5 or 2-inch long beads there. And also notice that I have these things actually clamped to a flat plate. That allows me to get a little bit more heat in these without worrying about warping them as much. But I'm still only going to go this little bit at a time and then let this whole part completely cool and then kind of rotate around. Right? You don't want too much heat in here because you can end up warping these, and then if these are warped, your 4-link isn't going to work properly. So just always keep in mind that metal shrinks and expands, so you got to kind of be careful with that. So right now I'm mocking up this front axle, and basically what I'm doing here is I'm taking just an angle meter here, or a level basically, and I'm putting it on this flat surface here. You can see on this axle there's a flat surface that's been machined. That is for the bat wings. Okay, so I'm just putting this on there, making sure my level is centered. This is a magnetic base, so it automatically kind of levels itself. But if you look there, you see it's perfectly on 0, right? This side's also obviously on 0. Okay, so I actually had it pretty close when I was sitting here, so all I had to do was kind of just spin this a little bit, just tad, you know, just kind of tap it. And then another thing I'm doing here is I'm taking the same common point of reference on each side of the axle here, so you can take like the kingpin, or you can take, you can put the bolt back in here and go based off the head of the bolt or something like that. And then you measure from, say, here up to here, up this rivet maybe, and then do the same thing on the other side, right? And then you can also do kind of from maybe, say, the head of this bolt back to the corner of your frame here, back to the motor mount, or whatever you want to do. That way, the more points of references, the better, as long as they're all pretty close, within a 1/16 of an inch. Or I guess I shouldn't say that, but that's what I'm going based off of. Then it's probably good. Right now I have this perfectly set. So I eyeballed it with this opening here, and then I did measurements to get it precise and just kind of tapped it. Move the jack stand just a tad bit. You want to make sure your frame is obviously 90 degrees straight from your axle, right? You'll know when you measure if it's not. You'll get some weird numbers, and you'll just have to kind of move the frame around or whatever.
Oh God, I need something. Oh, I wish I had something. I wish I had something. Oh, I wish I had something. Oh God, I need
So now that I got these bushings pressed into the rod ends here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spin them until there's approximately about a ½ an inch between the top of the rod end and the top of the rod here. And I'm going to measure it with a dial caliper, right? Okay, that's at 670, so I got to go a little bit further. Perfect, right about there. So I'm going to do that with each one of these for each side, right? Paying attention to, if you look here, you can see that these are offset, angled a little bit, so you got to kind of pay attention. Okay, now those are both the same. Now I can mount these into the bat wings with the supplied bolts from Speedway Motors. Mount these into here like so, right? And then I can mount the bat wing onto the axle itself, and I can continue my fab.
my God.
Alright, so I came across a problem with running a Ford setup on a Chevy frame here with the way I got mine set up anyways. If you look here, you can see that the bat wing is in the axle, right? But as you can see, this bolt is further that way, giving it an angle of about something like that, right? Well, this right here, when it's on the frame, I'll show you like this, has an angle the opposite way, right? So, what I actually had to do, back here you can see now that I got this one mounted, I actually had to cut off an inch off of this right here, so it changed the angle the opposite direction. That allowed me to have it like this, so I could have the proper angle to match the angle up here. Now, I'm not sure if this is just because this is a Chevy and I'm trying to put Ford parts on it, or if Speedway has a mistake in their catalog, but I made this work. The fact that I had to cut off an inch on this side, which is the directional, or which is the push side, I might lose a little bit of strength, but because I boxed these in with good 1/4 inch plate, that actually makes up for what I might lose by having to do this. I was thinking that I could maybe take this bat wing and flip it upside down, and get these the angle of this the opposite way, right? Well, that would work, but then the angle of my bars would be off, because I'll show you over here. say if you take this out, second here. Okay, so now I got this side here flipped. Just kind of to show you guys what I'm talking about here. Okay, so now that I got this flipped, right? Well, the triangle here, this little bracket, goes on here like so, right? Correct? And what you want is you want these bars to be parallel with the ground at ride height. So if I were to do it like this would give me a bad angle on my bars, because you can see that this down here, this is my ride height setting right here. This down here, the top bar, is a lot lower than the top bar would be on this side, giving you an angle of about that much. So I elected not to flip this batwing over. I've never seen the batwing flip before, but I was thinking about it, but then it just really wouldn't work unless I were to extend this down, which wouldn't make sense. So that's why I elected to just cut off an inch off this other side over here, because it puts the top and the top at about the same spot as far as height wise. So it's a little bit of modification, a little more than I thought I'd have to do, but that's kind of how it goes when you're making something work that's not supposed to work. But that'll turn out nice, nice and strong. Weld those up, and then the axle will be set. So if you guys remember, I said that I wanted the kingpins on the front end to be straight up and down, right? So it's 0 degrees. Well, I got that information from Speedway when I called and asked one of their technicians, and that is not correct. So do not put your front end at 0 degrees or straight perpendicular to the ground. You want it actually laid back like 3 or 4 degrees with radial tires, about 6 or 7 degrees with bias ply old school tires. That's because the way it works, you want the weight to be over center, so that when you're going down the road, your stuff doesn't kind of shake and make you wobble all over the road. I'm kind of disappointed that Speedway actually told me the wrong information, because I took their brackets here. Remember these brackets that I boxed in, right? And they were an inch longer on the back side here. So I thought, since I was doing Chevy frame, and this isn't really a universal kit, you know, it's for a Ford frame, so I thought, oh, maybe just have to modify, right? So I cut off an inch, thus in turn turning this back and turning my angle from a 5 or 6 degree angle back to straight up and down. So what I'm gonna have to do now, because Speedway kind of screwed me up, I'm gonna have to cut this, and then I'm gonna have to put at least a 1/4 inch plate in between here to get the angle back to about where it needs to be. Because these were set for bias ply tires from the factory, and I'm gonna run radial tires up front, I can get away with about half as much. So that 1/4 inch will almost get me to my half inch that I'm gonna need back on here. And then I'll have to do something with the rods here, a little bit of adjustment in here, right, to get these to sort of make up for the difference in the degrees. I'm really disappointed that Speedway gave me the wrong information. I spent a whole day boxing these up and making these all work and getting everything fit up. And then later, one of my buddies actually told me that it has to have angle on it, and then I looked it up online, and people also confirmed that it has to have angle. So don't always take what you hear from Speedway as 100% truth, like I did. It'll save yourself some time. Now that you see I got these kind of tacked in place, and they ain't moving nowhere, I got tacks on 4 corners, I'm gonna actually end up welding these all the way up. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start on this side here, and then go to this side, okay? And then I'll go over to the other side to weld on that side, so that this side of the frame doesn't get too hot, or this bracket doesn't get too hot. And if you notice, if you just heard that little popping right in that corner, that was because my wire speed was too fast, so I turned the wire speed down. Still too fast, so I'm actually gonna grind that down and restart. I had this set up right, the welder set up right, but then I moved it around, and if you look, you'll have different directions in the hoses that'll affect your wire speed just slightly, and that little bit can give you a little bit of popping weld or burning in weld, and then you want to adjust the wire speed accordingly. It's okay to start over with this. You want to make sure your beads on this are especially strong. or I'm gonna make sure, just because this is gonna be bagged, so this is gonna take a lot of force this way because it's gonna have so much travel in the suspension. So like I said, you can grind the weld out that you just put in and redo the weld. If you look in there, you can see that I just took my cutoff wheel and I went most of the way through. You can see it's about 2 passes right out there. Sorry, this is hard to do. It's about 2 thicknesses of my cutoff wheel. My cutoff wheel is a 1/16 of an inch thick, so I did 2 passes next to each other to make it about an 1/8 inch gap there. And then I cut into the good bead on the left there. You can see that's a decent little spot there. I cut into that, and then I can actually penetrate into that weld. Okay, and then I'm gonna do one big pass over all of it too. So I'll actually do one pass to fill in to fill that in, right? And then I'll do a wide pass over all of it to make sure that it's really strong. See, it's more work this way, but because I screwed up the first time. Mistakes happen. Just make sure you figure out how to fix them, you know.